Hey there, young historians. We are back with the American Civil War, and I call it the American Civil War because civil wars can happen anywhere. A civil war is simply people from one country fighting against people from the same country. That's what makes it a civil war. And really, it's a conflicting term. It's an oxymoron. War cannot be civil. Civil means that you get along and you're being kind to each other. So they call this a civil war because this could be family members literally fighting against family members, brothers against brothers, and countrymen against countrymen. So we're now looking at the first battle, the first major land battle. It's called the Battle of Bull Run, and it is going to be between the North, the Union in the blue, and the South, the Confederacy in the red. I want to make sure that we kind of get a couple of ideas on like who's on what side here. So on the left here we see a Union soldier. Union soldiers are typically going to be wearing blue. They typically have full uniforms, while the Confederate soldiers are typically wearing a gray or like a butternut squash kind of a color, or maybe just the clothes that they had from home because they were not as well uniformed and supplied. I brought with me a couple of little figures. Here I've got my Union figure here. He's wearing his Union blues, and here is my Confederate soldier. He's got his gray butternut squash color. These two guys are actually made out of birch wood. They're just carved out. One of my family members, this was his hobby, and so he carved me a couple of Civil War guys here, so I'll bring them along for future classes and videos. So when we say the Union, it's like, who is fighting in this war again? The Union is the North. It is also really the United States, a union of states. And sometimes Southerners call them the Yankees. Down there in the bottom, I call them also the winners, because ultimately, I'm spoiling it, but ultimately the Union is going to win. You made some predictions yesterday. Was your prediction right? The Confederacy is also known as the South, or the Confederate States of America. They're also known as the Rebels, because they're rebelling against the United States government. So they're also the Rebels, or the Rebs, and they even are sometimes called Secesh. And that's because they were the ones who seceded from the Union, or broke away from the Union. Alright, so here we've got soldiers marching off to war, a couple of images. You can see the contrast between the Union soldiers in straight lines, all well uniformed, and a bigger city that they're coming from, a wealthier part of the country. And then you've got the contrast of the Confederate soldiers marching off, not quite as organized, smaller city. And you also see the American flags and the Confederate flags flying. So here's an American flag, and this is a Confederate flag. Okay, so the soldiers march off to war, and really the first action is the Union soldiers here in Washington, D.C. are going to march down to the capital of the Confederacy, Richmond, Virginia. It's about 100 miles away. And this is also a road map, so there weren't roads like this back then, but I'm just using this as an example from DC to Richmond. So these soldiers march off to war, essentially along a similar path to this, which is around 100 miles. It's kind of crazy that the two warring countries, their capital cities, are only about 100 miles away. That's from like, it's not even from Minneapolis to Duluth. That's less than 100 miles. So on July 21st, 1861, the Union soldiers march out of Washington, D.C. toward Richmond, Virginia. Along the way, right here in Manassas, Virginia, there are 30,000 Confederate soldiers already waiting for the Union soldiers. So now this is a closer map. We see D.C. They traveled this way, and they met the Confederate soldiers here in Manassas, Virginia. This is a battle map, a campaign map. Anything in red, that's the Confederacy. Anything in blue, that's the Union, just for your reference. So when the Union soldiers start marching down toward Manassas and really towards Richmond, the emotion in the Union is one of positivity. Union soldiers and people from the United States, they're feeling like this is going to be a quick and easy war. And it's displayed here in Centerville, where a whole bunch of Americans from Maryland and the surrounding areas, they go along to just watch the Union soldiers go and defeat the Confederacy. They think it's going to be a pretty quick and easy war, fairly bloodless, and they were just going to go along for the ride and just see some entertainment. So lots of people, including congressmen, followed along, and here in Centerville, they sort of set up as if they were just going to be watching some sort of event. And it's turned into what sometimes they call the picnic battle, because people had to bring their own food with them, and so it was almost as if they were just picnicking and watching this first battle. Just shows you how confident they actually were. I want to give us a vocab word here. The word is casualty. And a casualty is a person who is dead, wounded, or missing. And it could be from war, it could be from some disaster or accident as well. But a casualty is people who are dead, wounded, or missing. And you might go, uh-oh, this seems ominous. A little foreshadowing here. Why is he telling me about casualties and people who are dead, wounded, or missing? That's because this first battle is not bloodless. This first battle, the first battle of Bull Run, is the bloodiest battle in U.S. history up to this date. In just one battle, the casualties are massive. For the Union, nearly 3,000 dead, wounded, or missing, and for the Confederacy, 1,750 casualties in this one first battle. And the Confederacy sees this battle as a victory. They're like, hey, we had a lot less casualties, and we stopped the Union from advancing. So the Confederacy sees this as a victory, and the Union, they're disappointed because they're realizing after this first battle of Bull Run that this would not be a quick and easy war. They are disappointed. Okay, I'm going to have you pause now, and you're going to jump over to the textbook, and you're going to do a short reading. Now, you can read all of this if you'd like, but I really want you to read about women supporting the war right here highlighted. You're going to read that section of the textbook to find out how women participated in supporting the war, and then you'll be answering a couple of questions in the forum, so you might want to just pause the video right here. And now we're back. All right, so you've now looked at women's involvement in the Civil War, and you found out that women were pretty involved. One of the ways that, actually I'll jump back here. One of the ways that women were involved is by scouting and spying. So when we had the Union soldiers leave DC and start traveling down toward the capital of Richmond, and they got stopped here in Manassas with 30,000 Confederate soldiers, you might wonder, why were they waiting there? How did those Confederate soldiers know when the Union soldiers would be moving? How did they know that they would be advancing? It's because of this woman, Rose O'Neal Greenhow. She lived in Washington, D.C., but she sympathized with the Confederacy. So even though she was a Northerner, she thought the Confederacy had a good reason to go to war, actually to secede. And she was a spy for the South. Now, Rose Greenhow was well-connected. She was a socialite, you could say. She went to all the parties and the balls, and she'd wear the gowns and all that kind of stuff. And Rose Greenhow knew a lot of powerful people, including generals in the Union Army. And she would talk to them and sort of flirt with them and get information from them. And then she would pass those secrets on to the South. And sometimes she would even put the messages into a piece of paper and curl them up in her daughter's hair curls as a way to hide it. And her daughter would walk, and the Confederate generals would get the message out of those curls. Okay, so Rose Greenhow was a spy. This is actually one of her ciphers, or one of her documents. Now, you've practiced this with the breakout box, where a symbol represents a letter, right? So this is what she would use to pass on these messages. In case they got caught, it would just look like it was just childish writing, okay? So now I'm going to have you decode a message. And the message is right here. It's using a pigpen cipher. Again, you've practiced this as well. So you're going to use a code to decipher this message, and then you're going to enter that into the Google form. And this is how you do this, okay? These symbols here represent those letters. Pretty straightforward. The first one is sort of this backwards L right here, A. So it is A space, and then we've got another word here, another word here. So I'm going to have you use the cipher to decode the message and enter that into the Google form. Okay? That's it for today. The American Civil War, the first battle of Bull Run. You got it. Peace.